Welcome back to Flashpoint. A partial win for Governor Cooper this week as the power struggle continues with Republicans in the General Assembly. A three-judge panel temporarily ruling that the governor should have the power to appoint to 3 boards, including transportation, public health, and economic investment. It's just part of an ongoing battle as the General Assembly tries to strip more power away from the governor. Joining us now is Giselle Torres. She's the communications manager at Democracy North Carolina. It's a group that works to protect democracy here in the state. Giselle, thanks for coming on Flashpoint. We appreciate it.
Good to be here.
So this week, a judge temporarily letting Governor Cooper keep some of his power. What makes this, in your view, so significant?
Well, as we've seen in previous years with the state legislator, there is a unequivocal need to for unconstitutional power grabs. So what Governor Cooper is arguing in this lawsuit is that it was an unconstitutional power grab, and by the state courts issuing a temporary injunction for the 3 boards and commissions from going into effect, they're siding with the governor and they're siding with the people at this point to ensure there is a separation of powers. At the heart of the argument was the law went too far and it violated that separation of powers and the rules that are embedded in the North Carolina state constitution, which says the General Assembly passes laws, but the executive branch enforces them.
So let's say that Republicans go on to succeed with this and they, in fact, strip more power from the governor. What do you view as the implications here?
Well, as we have learned over the time that the 3 branches of government are there to be a checks and balances for one another, the judicial branch, the executive branch, and the state legislative branch. What we've seen more recently with the North Carolina Supreme Court, for example, and their unprecedented overturning of recent rulings after the 2022 midterm elections is that they're starting to side with the legislative branch due to similar political ideologies. What we're now also seeing when stripping the appointment powers here for the state governor, along with other appointment powers that we've seen in the past, like in the 2021 state budget, where they stripped his abilities to call for a state of emergency in response to the coronavirus pandemic and outbreak, that they're also going for this centralization of power at the state legislature. So really, they're wanting to control not only the state legislature, but the influence and the power of our judiciary courts and the governorship. So no matter who's in power, the General Assembly, which is now controlled by Republicans, would have an overreach of power and authority when either passing laws, when either appointments are made at the judiciary or at the commissionary standards commissions, the Coastal Resources Commission, the Environmental Management Commission, and the other commissions that the judges have left for changes. We're seeing that it's really going to be a centralization of power, and that really goes against what Democracy North Carolina stands for and what the voters have stand for in elected leaders that align with the positions that the community members have, rather than the political views that those few Republicans or those that control the General Assembly have.
We had Pat McCrory on the show a while back, and he told us that he was against the idea of stripping power away from the state's executive because the shoe was on the other foot. Democrats get power back, then they would enforce this the same way, and it wouldn't be good news for Republicans. That being said, and what you just explained to us, why is this not a more bipartisan issue then?
I think what we're seeing with the temporary injunction, knowing that it was 2 Republicans and 1 Democrats, that there is at the state level, at least, perhaps not at the federal level, but at the state level that we're seeing in the courts right now issuing this injunction, that there is a consensus that is too far of an overreach. When we know that no matter who's in power, whether it is a Republican, whether it is a Democrat, that the voters voted those folks into power. And we've seen North Carolina become a quote unquote purple state where a majority of voters might have voted for one certain candidate at the presidential election in 2020. Let's say the majority went for Trump, but the majority for the governorship went to Roy Cooper. So we are seeing that among voters, among state legislators, and with this temporary injunction, we're seeing it at the the court level too, that there is a consensus, a bipartisan consensus, that there is too far of an overreach happening.
Let's talk about the new district maps that have been drawn by the General Assembly in the last couple of weeks. The new maps essentially guarantee Republicans will get more control of North Carolina's congressional delegation, 10-3, 10-4, depending on how it would work out. Democrats vowing to sue. As you know, this issue has been litigated in the court system constantly over the last decade or so. Where do you see this finally sort of landing?
Well, as we saw in 2018, where the courts, at that time, the political makeup of the courts did side with the people, and they did strike down partisan gerrymandering and racial gerrymandering, noting that the maps were drawn with surgical precision. And after the 2020 census was released, and in 2021, when the redistricting cycle started again, there was a special master that was appointed due to the maps that were presented in 2021, again, targeting, packing, and cracking Black communities, minority communities, communities of color in North Carolina. So a special master was appointed at that time. And the Princeton Review named the maps of North Carolina at that time to be one of the most fairest maps in the country, giving 7 Democrats and 7 Republicans the equal leaning in the maps that we used for the 2022 midterm election. So we had, and there is an opportunity for North Carolina to have fair maps that represent the purple state, that represent the people and the vast diversity of political ideology across North Carolina.
Giselle Torres, she's the communications manager at Democracy North Carolina. Giselle, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it. More Flashpoint after this.